up, everybody? Welcome back to Street Pods Garage. As I mentioned in the last video, we are changing our oil and we are going to do an oil change, which probably most of you have done before and you guys know how to do it. But the interesting thing here is that we are going to be using AMSOIL V-Twin motorcycle oil. And the reason I want to try this out is it has more additives than what your typical Indian Scout oil change kits allow. It has additives for rust prevention. It has better additives for the clutch. And I want to see for myself if that's going to be the case. As you saw earlier today, I did a quick check of what the bike temperature is after riding it for approximately 45 kilometers or 30 miles from my house to my work. Ambient temperature 20 degrees. Now looking at the exhaust, reading about 70 degrees Celsius. And now let's point it at the engine, and basically 72, 73 degrees Celsius is the highs. Oh, 74 right there. Oh, 78 on the exhaust. And I registered the temperature with your regular oil from Indian. Now we're going to do the oil change, and I'm going to temp gun it to see what the bike is at beforehand, to see that what the temperature is. And then I'm going to ride it home, and I'm going to do a secondary confirmation of seeing how hot the bike gets, because possibly maybe the bike runs a little bit colder, which again is better for longevity. Now, to start this job, as most of you know, oil changes are super easy. All you need is a pan. You need a 6mm Allen key or an Allen key socket. In my case, I'm using the Allen key socket with the ratchet. And then you need a filter wrench. And this is my personal favorite, the ones that go through on themselves, because I can use this in a lot of cases. Now, in a lot of cases, you might need to jack up your bike to be able to get a pan under it. I have a fairly slim pan, but even so, it doesn't really want to fit. Nice part about having airbags, as referenced in the last video. All the clearance in the world for all of your oil changes and oil change requirements. Now, for you guys without airbags, get a nice jack up your bike a little bit, secure it down, make sure it's straight. It will aid your oil changes tremendously. And in addition, if you don't have a motorcycle jack, or you can't afford one, or whatever XY reason there is, you can always use a normal hydraulic jack or your car scissor jack. However, I do not advise that. And if you're going to do it, ensure that you have somebody else keeping your bike stable, just to make sure that you're safe. So, how do you do an oil change? Let me show you. So we'll begin the oil change by removing your fill plug. And the reason you remove it is let's check the quality of the oil as it is right now. Let's see how dark, how crappy it is. And in addition, we'll leave it open to allow for better drainage by increasing the airflow through your crankcase. So let's do that now. And as I mentioned before in prior videos, do this when the bike is cold, because the amount of times I've touched my hand and burnt it trying to check my oil when the bike is hot, just not advised. Even if you just like stop riding for 15 minutes, the bike stays hot for a minute. And in addition, this gets super snug at times. So if you need to use some pliers to pop it off, by all means, use the tools available. So I know my oil level is good. I'm not really checking for an oil level. If you're going to check an oil level, you want to make sure your bike is upright and not on an angle. And I'm looking at the consistency. So my oil is quite brown, but it's not black. So we are within our oil change cycle. I'm going to smell it to make sure that no fuel is getting in, because that would be a good indication that possibly my oil rings are gone, or I have other problems as well. And make sure that there is no metal shavings or any crud in my oil. So there we are. Smells good. Probably tastes good too. So let's go ahead, and now I will show you the 2 drain plugs you have to remove. There will be 2 Allen key drain plugs underneath your oil pan, and now we're going to zoom in and show you them. So these are the 2 drain plugs, 1 and 2. And the nice thing about the 2 of them is that they're close enough together that you can use 1 drain pan. So let's remove those next. Using our trusty 6mm Allen key, we're going to break these 2 loose and then slip the oil pan under and take them off by hand so that we don't make a mess. So let's go. Perfect. Now let's slip out under the pan and drain off the oil. With the 2 drain plugs cracked loose, let's take them out by hand. And if you're good at this, you will probably not get dirty. With the oil draining, we can temp gun and see how hot the bike is when it's cold. So let's go ahead and do that now. So make sure my laser is on. There we are. And 29.8 degrees Celsius on the rear cylinder and 29.1 on the front cylinder. And our exhaust is approximately 26.3 degrees Celsius. The reason I chose AMSOIL is also the cost savings. So if you go on the AMSOIL website and you choose to be a preferred customer, you subscribe to a $20 annual fee. However, in return, you get discounts on all of your oil purchases up to 25%. And in addition, there's also discounts for coupons and etc. and certain premiums where they will give you free quantities of oil to help you out along the way. So for me, it is super beneficial when I have a car, my wife has a car, I have a motorcycle and another motorcycle. That means I do oil changes quite a bit, and saving a couple dollars on the oil will really help out. So if this is something that interests you, by all means, I recommend checking it out. And if you do proceed with the purchase, reference me and my account number at 309-810-61, just as a person who referenced you. We're starting to slow down. So at this point, we'll wait out a little bit longer, and then we're going to put our drain plugs back in, clean up the surface with some brake clean, and torque everything back up. Let's go. When you have your drain plugs out, before just putting them down, a good thing is to look at them, because most drain plugs are magnetic, and if there's any metal shavings in your engine, they will gravitate towards your drain plug, and it's a good thing to inspect them to see what kind of oil is at the bottom of your crankcase. So again, little field test to check for any granules of metal or anything wrong, dirt, dust, grime, whatever. So just a quick tip. Now, as it's still draining, what we're going to do is we have 2 options. We can either put the drain plugs back in with their little O-rings, or we can take off the filter. So in my case, to mitigate the mess, we are going to put the drain plugs loosely back in with the provided crush washers. Now, AMSOIL will supply the oil and the filter. However, for these, you will have to get them directly for Indian. And the part number that you need for a set of 2 crush washers is 104865. Don't forget that you will need these. All right, let's put our drain plugs back in loosely for now and take off the oil filter. With the drain plugs back in, we're going to shift over and show you how to remove the oil filter. With the drain plugs back in, we're going to remove the filter next. The filter is located beside your horn, so in some cases you may have to move the horn to access the filter. Now I'm going to use my strap wrench. I want to slip it over the filter to make sure that I'm on it. And if you have a different filter wrench, this may work as well. However, this is my preferred one for miscellaneous jobs. Let's get that on tight. And we begin by turning the filter. Now with the filter cracked loose, we're going to slip the pan back over to not make a mess. And we're going to thread out the filter. With all the oil drained out, now it's time to reinstall the new filter. And remember that you want to prep the O-ring on the filter. So take your new oil, dip your finger a little bit, and just saturate the O-ring. Because this filter is being mounted sideways, you do not need to pre-fill it as you're just going to dump it all out. It's not a bottom mounted filter, it is a sideways mounted filter. Just a quick tip. Now, let's get the pan out of the way. With it barely dripping, I'm going to toss a rag under to mitigate the mess, and I'm going to thread this on. How the filter is installed is you're going to go all the way snug plus a full turn. All right, so let's put the filter back on and ensure that the old O-ring did come off with the previous filter, as you do not want to put a seal on a seal. So double check that. In my case, I'm good. We're going to start the filter on. Now that the filter is snug, we are going to go one extra full turn. At this point, you're almost done with the reinstall. You may have not had good grip on the filter, so my advice is do not put the oil filter wrench back on to tighten it, but instead use some sandpaper so that you have a better grab. And in addition, don't forget that we only loosely put on the drain plugs, so we want to make sure that they're snugged up to the torque spec, or in my case, the German spec of good and tight. I will have the proper torque spec in the comments below. So let's go with that next. Now with everything snugged up and cleaned up, and the reason I clean everything right now is not just to mitigate the mess, is also because we're on a motorcycle where getting oil on your tires can affect you a lot more than in a car. But in general, also shop cleanliness is just a big thing for me. Now we're ready to fill it up. Everything at the bottom is done. We're going to get our good trusty funnel, put it in the hole, and we're going to begin filling. For this part, I don't mind that the bike is on an angle, as I know that the spec is about 3.5 to 4 quarts of oil. And AMSOIL supplied me with 4 quarts. Am I going to go all the way 4 quarts? No, because there may be still residue in the bottom of the crankcase and the bottom of the oil pan, so that will change your level a little bit. So we're going to go to about 3 quarts. We're going to straighten out the bike. We're going to check. Also take into account that the filter has not been primed yet, so our level is going to be a bit higher than it actually is until that filter is filled with oil. But 3 quarts, check, and then from that point, we're going to top it up and check until we're happy on the dipstick. So let's go. Now with the bike filled to 3 quarts, we're going to insert our dipstick after straightening out the bike, and we're going to check our level. And make sure that you insert it all the way down so that you thread it in, and be very careful that you do not strip the threads, as I have seen that before, and that is not a lot of fun. So we're going to insert it all the way in, like so. Back it out and have a rag handy so that you can clean it and check. We back it out and we are at the full mark right now at 3 quarts. Now remember that our oil filter is not primed, so this might be a misreading. We're going to clean that up as this oil is super new right now. And we're going to reinsert that. We're going to start the bike, and then we're going to run it for about 30 seconds. And then we're going to recheck and see what the level is at afterwards. So let's proceed to do that next. All right, let's start the bike. With the bike on, and I also cycled the gears, because in this case, your oil is also affecting your clutches and everything, rather than on a car when you have engine oil and a transmission. We cycled the gears. We're going to let it cool off and let the oil all come back down to the pan. And we're going to check and top up if necessary. Let's do that next. Now that some time has passed, hopefully all the oil has drained back to the pan. And we're going to open it up and check. Clean it off first, as it's going to read too high right now with the bike that just ran. Reinsert and check. And we're reading at about just over half. So we need to top it up just a hair more. All right, we're about 3/4 of the way up and we're within range. So here I am pretty happy. I may top it up a little bit more, but the next big thing is going to be to take it out, take it on a proper road test, come back, let it settle, and then recheck one more time just to make sure that everything is proper. And also just a quick tip, when you're checking the oil, I hate when people do this and they check it like so. Your oil runs down the dipstick and you misread. Always try to check it in a way that it came out of your engine, or at least parallel to the ground or as close to do so. Let's go. Now to conclude the video, we've done our road test, and the big important thing here to check is ensuring that you have no leaks. And that's why I always clean everything underneath to make sure that as you drive and you come back to check, you can ensure that nothing's seeping oil, as that can be dangerous, especially getting it on your rear wheel. So let's check that first. Drain plugs look dry and the oil filter is dry. And again, be very careful doing all of this, as you may burn your hands. Next, let's look at the heat with the AMSOIL oil that was supplied. And I want to double check that and compare, possibly, is it hotter or colder than the Indian Scout oil. So we're going to do the same check as earlier. Put the laser on. Let's see, right there. We'll start with the rear cylinder. We're coming in at about 83 Celsius. And the front cylinder, we're coming in at 82 Celsius. And the exhaust, being the hottest point, is at about 105 Celsius. So let's see if I can hold that and show it to the camera. Let's see. About dropping to the 70s at a farther distance, and also in the 70s, and the exhaust being at about 90 to 100 as I get farther and closer. Now, in a personal opinion, riding this bike back home, I don't know if it's just the fresh oil change, or is it the fact that AMSOIL, so I don't want to be biased to the new product, but my shifting was a lot smoother. Now, I was at the end of my drive cycle for the previous oil, and this is completely fresh, so it could be drastically affecting it. However, in my personal opinion, I thought that the shifting and the overall engine performance, the smoothness, was better. So take that as you wish, but I will leave you on that. Thank you guys for watching, and ride safe.